Doom Squad. 300 years of Special Forces warfare. Solo wargame rules. Look at this cover art. When I bought this book on the Alternative Armies website, I thought it was pure black, and then I got it in my hot little hands, and look at that. Look at that creepy looking guy. An interesting challenge here. How do you make a solo Special Forces wargame that covers 300 years? Well, it depends on what 300 years you're talking about. These come to us from Alternative Armies. It cost me like, I don't know, 15, 20 bucks. Soft cover, I don't know, you'd think I'd look at this stuff before I started filming. 44 pages, slim volume, but I think there's a lot going on under the hood. Now, this video that we're looking at today is not it's not a review. I haven't played the game. You can't really review a game until you've played it. Any war game worth its salt has a lot of complexity going on underneath the hood, and you need to explore that rule set over time. You need to see how the various subsystems interact, and you need to reevaluate a couple of times before you can really get an honest assessment and really appreciate the sophistication of the set of rules. So not a review, more of an introduction, bit of a flip through, commentary on how fun it is to read, how easy it is to parse, and kind of an introduction to the rules themselves, so that in our next video on Doom Squad, we can just dive right into the action, not have to waste a whole lot of time at the start. Now, this is, of course, from Alternative Armies, formerly 15mm.co.uk, which means you're looking at one of these goofy-sized books, although, to be fair, Wiley Games' Arena of Blood, also a new title out about a month ago. Let's take a look. Let's compare to a real. Here we go. So here's Age of Fantasy Skirmish. This is your 8.5 by 11. So in order, here you go. Which is the biggest? Well, Wiley Games uses these fun little, is it folio size? I don't know. It's a little smaller. So for those of you that like the physical and the tactile really matters, it's got, I don't know, kind of like semi-gloss. This is dumb. Let's look at the game itself, shall we? Written by Stephen Dames, copyright 2019. So it's been out for a little while. It's been on my list of things to do. And I guess the first thing to talk about is, this is Special Forces for 300 years. Well, what 300 years, right? That could mean a whole lot of things. And basically, it's starting from the Napoleonic era. And it goes up through ultra-modern, what we now think of as ultra-modern. Looking a couple of decades into the future. And it's broken down into 4 eras. The first of which, of course, is the Napoleonics, and they call that Jaeger, or it's spelled J-A-G, so I'm assuming that's the German pronunciation, not Jaeger Doom Squads. It also has Riflemen, which would be more Civil War, I believe, and then Stormtrooper is more modern, and then Special Forces is the ultra-modern version. So those are the 4, and you will have to put special tweaks in to reflect those different eras, and we'll talk about that as we go through. And I think the best thing to do, so again, this is a Special Forces, so you're talking about you are going to take on the role of a limited number of elite forces, and then you're going to go explore the battlefield, try to achieve your objectives, and get out while minimizing casualties. How do you do that? Well, first of all, let's talk about the scale. Of course, the figure scale is from 28 to 15 millimeter to 28. You can also use 20 millimeter. So there you go. And you can do this co-op, but the deal is that, just to kind of step back for a moment, what's going to happen is you're going to buy forces, and you're probably going to have a couple of again, Special Forces, limited numbers. The figures that you're controlling are probably going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 15, depending on how you want to set it up. And for every figure you have, you're going to have one encounter marker that you're going to put on the table, and then you have to go achieve your objectives. So I always like to, oddly enough, and I think I'm a little unusual in this, I like to look at the scenarios first, because those will tell you exactly what you're going to be doing. And then we can kind of go back and look at how you set up your forces and how you actually implement that scenario. There are 6 basic scenarios, and to set up the table, what you're going to do is buy your forces for every figure that you have. If you have 2 squads and a heavy weapons, oh, look at that. Brigand Light Horse. Oops, don't worry about that. I've got these target markers, and for every figure that you got, You're going to put a target marker down. You're going to spread them evenly across the board. For patrol, all you have to do is reveal one target marker for each of your individual figures. Of course, if it's an enemy and he starts shooting, that can trigger the arrival of additional target markers. It's going to be hard to get in and out. For secure objective, you put a building on the opposite side of the table, and what you need to do is get one of your squads into the building and hold it for, as you see here, 3 turns, and then you need to get back out through your deployment zone. So if you're going to do the secure objective, set your deployment zone on one side of the table, building on the other, get over there, hold it 3 turns, and then get out. Interestingly, mission failure for patrol. If you lose a figure, you're done, you lose. If you fail to take the building, or there's enemy troops in the building after you've occupied it, so within 3 turns, you lose. Hot extraction. An important person is put on the table, and you have to get them across the table. So this means that you're trying to avoid as many target markers as you can and get across the table as fast as you can. Defend perimeter, assassination. You can kind of imagine what those might be. So I'm not going to beat that up. Essentially, what you're doing is you're using these hidden deployment. Well, this hidden deployment to set up your enemies. Well, wait, what kind of target markers are we looking at here, man? And here's where the individual eras start to really take hold. I use these little 1-inch wooden markers, and I'm going to know that we've got an enemy machine gun. Gotta tell you, man, I tried to use Sharpie, and it kind of bled out, so these might be a little hard to read. You have to give a little bit of thought to the fact that, some of these have no target. That's what you're hoping for. Of course, you mix them up, put them face down so you don't know. Are you going to have enemy cavalry in the ultra-modern version? No, you are not. So take these out of the mix. Are you going to have an enemy RPG during the Jaeger era? They didn't have rocket-propelled grenades during the Napoleonic era. Take that out of the mix. Make sure that you're using an appropriate mix of hidden enemy markers. Like I said, even spread, and then there are rules for how far away you have to be before you encounter one of these, or flip it over, right? Incoming fire. You're not going to put an extra figure down. You're just going to have to respond to the fact that somebody at a distance is shooting at you. Civilian crowd. Ooh, enemy infiltrators, enemy scouts, all kinds of really good stuff. An enemy behind you, you'll pick this up and you'll put an enemy back here. The game does include plenty of rules for spotting, which will change based on whether it's night or day. And these essentially become your enemies. Well, okay, so let's say we have our enemy appears to the right. Then what do we do? Let's stick a pin in that. It's a little complicated, this particular game, because there are a lot of interacting subsystems that it's kind of hard to know which one to talk about first. So we're going to get to enemy reactions first. Let's look at the turn order, because this is the order in which you're going to experience the game, even if only vicariously through me in my next video. First, you get to go. Your boys are elite soldiers. They have the initiative. They're sneaking and peeking, so you get to activate, move, observe, shoot, fight, any order you want. Pick a model, do the stuff, move on to the next model. And really, it's probably by squad, but we'll see that in a little bit. Enemy phase. Then you test for the target marker's reactions. If you're trying to sneak past one, right? You got a wall here and your enemy over there, and you're trying to sneak along the wall. That marker may not be triggered. Then you test for the enemy unit reaction for troops that are already on the table. Then you can test for firing your own troops if they held fire right. So there is Overwatch rules. And then enemy troops move or fire. And of course, we do have spawn points. So in addition to all those markers that we lay on the table, if we got a road over here and a road over here, reinforcements may arrive on those roads to complicate things even further. So then we can circle back around to the question that led us here. How does the AI work? Well, for target markers, you don't have to test for the reaction, right? Particularly if they're in close combat. They're already fighting. We know what they're going to do, right? But for a target marker, if you are within 12 inches of it, or 8, if you or it is in cover, roll a d6. Just because you're close enough doesn't mean it's actually going to be revealed. On a 6, they're sleeping. We just leave it flipped over. You may be able to move off next turn, and you don't have to worry about it. You successfully infiltrated. On a 1, not only do you flip that marker over, you put another one down. And on a 2 through 5, the marker's revealed. If there's any troops, then you test for their reaction using this. I should point out, depending on the units that you purchase, you may have, say, a scout who will add or subtract from this roll, or add or subtract from the distance that you are spotting. Anyway, when we get to the enemy units, then when it comes time for the AI, we roll a d6. And here we go, right? On a die roll of 1. And again, you can imagine, right? You're already anticipating this. A 6 is good for us. A 1 is bad, right? On a 1, we roll it. A 1 figure fires a shot. If there's 1 to 6 figures, they rally, they go prone. So you can see 2 to 5 figures in the unit fire on a 2 to 5. I think it's the number that you roll. That's how many figures fire. And then on 6, they will advance. They're just going to charge right at you. You do need to check for the spawn points. Like I said, certain areas are more likely to generate enemy troops. Roll a d6 that has, let's see, at the end of each turn, after all firing is done, roll a d6 for each spawn point that has a firing figure within 24 inches. Or, again, you can imagine, if you're gaming in 15 millimeters, you may want to have that scale. This marker will not be, and then you just drop a new target marker down. It's not revealed until he actually gets to within that spotting distance. So that's basically it. We should take a look at firing. And it is a simple dice pool. For every figure that's in your unit, you roll a d6. If you have support weapons, you may add additional d6s. If you have a sniper, you may have, right, if you're short range, you'll add +1 to each of the die rolls. And you're basically looking for a 4-up to hit for your guys, because your guys are elite. 5-up for the enemies, because they're just, they're remps, man. They're enough. They're just guards. They're sleepy. They're just waking up. They're surprised. They're not quite as brave. And then, you only have a 90-degree arc forward, so that should help. You can aim. You get 2 actions. You can move and move. You can move and shoot. You can not move, which gives you the aim and additional bonus to hit. So, maybe you're hitting on 3s, which is nice. Then the effects of the hit, it's the attacking die roll. If you hit on a 6 or lower, you suppress. If it's a 7 or higher, that's where the aiming comes in, then you get a kill hit, right? So very, very simple. There are rules for firing into vehicles. We'll look at that when we actually play the game. And then we have to talk about if you are suppressed, then you'll have to use an action to remove the suppression marker. Good news, if you only have 1 suppression marker, for every suppression hit, of course, you have to spend another action. You can fall back and still remove that. But again, you're falling back, you're giving up the initiative. There are additional rules for concentrated fire. If you've got a light machine gun, for example, you can do suppressing fire, which gives you a bonus. It's harder to kill the guy, but you're going to force the enemy to keep their heads down. Smoke is going to come in handy in a battle like this. Got some tight rules for that. Of course, mortars don't apply. At this point, let me just pause to point out, they do have a lot of little historical paragraphs here littered throughout. The Punjab Irregular Force formed in 1851 to defend the northwest frontier of British India. 95th Rifles. So these two, right, so we've got our rifle and our Jaeger, and then another one here, the Tireurs. Again, this is for during the Franco-Prussian War. That would be during the Rifleman era. But they do have on all 4 of the major eras. Now, the big thing I want to show you guys, there's a really interesting way that you do movement in this game. It's a squad-based game. Well, each figure is an individual. But look at this. When you move your squad, when you deploy them, of course, you pick 1 formation. And your squads will be either 2, if they're carrying a support weapon. You can bring a mortar on the board to provide suppressing fire, or just to add to the general chaos. Maybe dropping smoke would be helpful, but your usual squad will have 4 guys in it. And you need to choose what kind of formation you're in, because remember we talked about arc of fire matters. The little rectangle here shows which way each of these figures is facing. As you might expect, when you are in column formation, you can move a lot faster than when you are in extended line formation. Each of these formations gives you certain benefits and penalties. If you are an extended line formation, you're a little slower, but when you are shot at, you have a bonus to your defense. It's harder to shoot these guys. The arrowhead formation is let me go back to the diamond head first of all. If you are doing city fighting, the diamond formation essentially turns each of these guys to face in one of the 4 cardinal directions. You move a lot slower, but you can fire in all 4 directions. So if the enemy does show themselves, you can return fire. For the arrowhead, you're in a situation where you've got, and you can reverse this, you can mirror image this. These 2 figures can be firing in this direction. Your leader is always firing forward, and you've got 1 guy firing to the left, right? So 1 to the left or 2 to the left, right? 2 and 1. And, you know, so it's really interesting that you have to figure this out, because if you are in the wrong formation and you want to change, you're going to have to give up essentially half a turn. This creates the kind of conundrums that we absolutely love as wargamers. If you are hustling, you can move in column formation. It's the fastest movement you've got, but only your team leader is going to be able to fire at the enemy. These 3 guys are, you know, hand on the shoulder and getting ready for the breach. He's the only one that's in a position to be able to fire. It's a really interesting look at that. I'm not sure which era. We may go ahead and just do a modern day version of this, just because it's interesting. And we don't do a whole lot of modern wargaming here on the channel. The event cards, I'll say this. I don't have a whole lot of vehicles. So if we do wind up doing modern day, I'm going to wind up pulling out the vehicles, and we're just going to go with strictly infantry on this. If I do want to roll a vehicle in there like a tank, it may be a sci-fi tank. You'll have to forgive me for using some proxies in that event. But that way we can work in machine guns and RPGs and mortars, all kinds of really fun stuff. And again, I think that using the ultramodern version of this, you could even proxy in. There's nothing that says you can't use something like Rebel Miniatures Titan Force, right? I'll be using 15mm, or boy, what other company makes science fiction figures that would be appropriate with both infantry and... Oh, I know. If you've got your Warlord Games Beyond the Gates of Antares figures, although I've never played this. I don't know. Do they have lots of big vehicles in this? I don't know. I'm not going to worry about it because we're not talking about Gates of Antares. We're talking about Doom Squad. Use whatever figures you got, right? But it is primarily for shooty bits and not like knights on horseback or wizards dropping bombs. There are some rules for event cards. This gets kind of advanced. You can choose whether to draw one or not, and they, again, add to the chaos. They can help you. They can hurt you. There's a pretty good mix. And I think, yeah, so they actually recommend... Right, back in the fight. Oh, chopper down. Yeah, there's your Mogadishu right there, right? So let's take a look at a couple of these just to get a feel for what they're like. Enemy infiltrators. A small force of enemy infiltrators. 1 to 4 figures. So roll a d6, and a 4 or more means... Oh, so there's a 50% chance that you got 4 figures. On a 1, 2, 3, it's that many figures. They will be placed within 10 inches of a randomly determined team. And... you're pretty smart. You know how to determine a direction randomly, so they don't really beat you up on that. What else we got? We got enemy strong point. Enemy troops have found a strong position. When this marker is revealed, it would be moved to the nearest enemy unit. Oh, I'm still looking at the target markers. Look at that. So enemy strong point. When this marker is revealed, it will be moved to the nearest enemy unit and will be left with that unit for as long as he stays in that position. In other words, your enemy is hunkered down and ready to go. I guess we can look at these. Let's look at some of these target markers now. Why not? I know we're a little all over the place. It's all right. The rules are a little all over the place, to be honest with you. Enemy RPG. Oh, look, an enemy RPG unit is placed on the table. Yeah, no kidding. That's not too surprising. But look at this. When enemy to the left is revealed, it will be removed from play and another marker placed on your left flank. And this is where it might be advantageous to be scouting out that 24 inches. You flip over the thing. You flip over the target marker, and you've identified that there's nobody there. Instead, there's somebody way off to the left. So, oh, I have a clearer path now. The civilians crowd. Roll a d6. Put 1 to 6 civilian figures next to it. Next turn, the player will have to roll d6. On a roll of 1 to 2 means shots are fired from the civilians. Roll 1 or 2 d6s to hit the nearest team. The civilians can be fired on. If all figures are killed in the group, there is no chance that the civilians will fire again. Oh, really? If you kill all of them, then they don't shoot back at you. You're telling me this for the first... Let me put my hand by my ear. You're telling me this for the first time. So now, let's back up a step, and let's take a look at the organization of these rules, because it is a little bit curious. Very much like On Guard. It's not the way I would have done it. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it's not the way I would have done it. It's not the way my brain works, but that's okay because as you can see from the table of contents here, we say, well, what is it? How do we set up and deploy? Wait, what am I deploying? Like, I don't even have my squads yet. They do right here on page 1. They do talk about the 4 historical periods, and I guess let me just rehash this. The Jaeger is basically up through the Napoleonics. So 7 Years' War. Oh, this should make a great game for the French and Indian Wars, or any of those like weird Canadian revolts that people talk about. How did I think about it? You could even do like pre-contact battles with this. I think that would work really well. But I'm speculating. Rifleman goes from, the basically up through the American Revolution and Napoleonics. The Rifleman goes up through Franco-Prussian and just before the First World War. Archduke, once the Archduke goes down, then you kick over into Stormtroopers, and that's where you've got the first half of the 20th century, World War II, French commandos, First and Second World Wars. You could probably get away with even, I would suspect, this would work well for the Korean War, and maybe even up into the Vietnam War. But then Special Forces, this is where you go from the 50s to the present day, covers covert ops by the world's elite fighting forces. And again, science fiction shouldn't be too hard. So then they talk about the game setup, and then we go into observation and enemy reactions, and now we talk about the actual how to fire, how to do Overwatch. We mix grenades and explosives in. All right, well, vehicles, but I don't. Okay, melee, and again, melee is just kind of a simple dice pool mechanic. The more figures you got, the more dice you're going to roll. You're rolling for hits, you're rolling to wound. Pretty simple. The actual game itself, one of the things I like about this, from what I've read so far, is that shooting is pretty simple, melee is pretty simple, moving is pretty simple. You've got the added complexity of not just controlling the enemy, but all of this hidden stuff going on. So it'll be very interesting to see how well it is balanced cognitively. We haven't even built our squads yet. Why are we talking about the weapons already? We haven't even talked about movement yet. So I think this is a little bit odd. They talked about firing and shooting and melee, and now we're going to talk about how the Napoleonic era works and what the weapons are. So you've got pistols, carbines, muskets. No surprises here. How many dice do you roll? Are there any modifiers? Hey, big surprise, right? If you've got a pistol, you get a +1 in the close combat. If you're firing with a musketoon, it's a short range. It only rolls 1 die, but it's +1 to hit. If you've got one of those volley guns, ooh, look at that. It's only 4 inches. It's basically a blunderbuss, right? You get to roll extra dice. You get to hit multiple targets. Ooh, field artillery. Yeah, I like that. Granados, you've got those in there. Right, okay, so we're talking about Jaeger weapons. I'll give them bonus points for this. We then move on to Rifleman. So it's the era is correct. Not quite as detailed a list here. Rifled musket, right? We're still into that era. We do have the primitive machine guns, though. If you're into the colonial era, this would be your Maxim guns would be in there as well. Field artillery, and then we talk about the stormtroopers. A little bit more speciality. Light machine guns, medium, heavy. We've got rifle grenades showing up and RPGs showing up for the first time. And take a look. These things get far more deadly. Bazooka will be at +2 to hit. It's you're only rolling 1 die, but it's got a 10-inch range. You've got mortars now, light cannons. So we're doing indirect artillery for the first time. Shotguns, impact, +1 in close I don't know what impact means, to be honest with you. Does it say down here? I have to look that up before we play the next game. And then finally, of course, we get into... But notice that our weapons are still primarily single-shot weapons, except we do have a little bit of assault automatic rifles and assault rifles, right? So this is where you've got your bar, right? Your Browning automatics are in there. And, of course, then we get to... Well, wait, hold on now. Oh, and then each of these comes with a period... Wait, so now we're back to the Jaeger period to talk about the secure objective. This is a specific... But wait, so this is what I'm talking about. It's a little bit odd, right? The Jaeger period, we've snuck in a new objective for one particular era, and then we skip back to Special Forces. You've only got 44 pages. I'll allow it. So Special Forces weapons, we can look at those real quick. And now we're looking at, again, now we have our definitive submachine guns, shotguns. Now we're talking about assault rifles, proper sniper rifles, and, longer ranges, more effect, more impact, and different vehicles and heavy weapons and how to use those, right? Vehicle strength, depending on the kind of vehicle you're talking about, heavy tanks. Things are going to be a little bit different through our Jaeger, and then so we do our Jaeger Doom Squad. And this, by the way, oh, wait a minute. Now we're into here's how you buy your squad. So we did weapons for each of the 4, and now we've stepped back, and now we're finally talking about how to build your squad. For the Jaeger era, you need a leader at 2 points. You can buy marksmen. Your sharpshooters start to show up. You can buy close assault specialists. Maybe you've got a, what do they call those? A sapper in there, right? Scouts. Additional assets. You can buy armor. You're not going to be wearing cuirassier armor. I don't know. I'm not the historiologist here. Maybe you guys know about some goofball in Vietnam that wore a cuirass, but it's typically not going to happen. Demo chargers are going to be different. And like I said, when it says when you're building your Doom Squad, you get to decide how many points you spend. Remember, the more points you spend, the more target markers you have to deal with. So ideally, I think you're probably going to want to go a leader, and then but it's per figure. So you might as well spend the extra points on getting the extra abilities, right? Take 10 figures, you got 10 markers. That'll give you room to operate. And here we are again. We've squeezed in an objective. Yeah, I think that's kind of bonus content. Not a lot of art in here. I'm not too stressed about that. Riflemen have largely the same abilities, but now we've got field glasses, sights for our weapons. I want to flip all the way up to the Special Forces, and we can see that we've got medics now in the Special Forces. Once we get into the more modern, we've got different special abilities become available to us. Our heavy weapons, now we can buy a mortar, right? That costs 5 points, but it is just a 2-figure team. I like it. Minimum range of 10, maximum of, what is that? No maximum. Oh, short range is up to 20. Beyond 20, you got to start worrying about that. Cannot move and fire. You got to set up your thing. So, curiously enough, and then we talk about leaders. Your leaders will have special abilities of their own. You're rolling a d6 on those. I think you pick from each one of these. And likewise, we'll look at that period specific. Now, bear in mind, extra lacy. I love that kind of period specific kind of thing. This leader is immaculately dressed. In the finest clothes available. What is this? In addition to command abilities, they can opt to choose period specific. Gunslinger, excellent shot with a pistol, reroll missed hits. So more special abilities coming your way. And after you've purchased your figures, now we can talk about formations. Okay. Again, I think that's a little curious. And then random stuff and the target markers. So maybe not the way I would have done it, but it does have a certain sense to it, right? First, we're going to talk about the turn order. Then we're going to talk about how you shoot and fight and spot the enemy. Then let's go ahead and build our squad. And then let's talk about how our squad moves around the table. That's legit. I mean, I can see why you did it that way. But, again, and I'll tell you, the benefit of that is when I'm trying to play one particular era, I don't have to look at a chart that's got every weapon in the game. If I'm doing my Stormtrooper era and I need the short list of Stormtrooper weapons, then they're right there for setup. Although it does come with, bonus points. Osprey Games, are you listening? Quick reference sheet. You got to love it. Now, it doesn't have the turn order, which is a little unfortunate because the turn order is a little bit complicated, but you can always photocopy that. Not a big deal. So, interesting game. I know today was a little bit of a flip through, but it's worthwhile, I think, to... Hey, where's our guy? There we go. There he is, looking at us through the dark vision goggles. And, he's got it's not the Punisher skull. But, kind of a good primer. What to expect coming up on the channel. I don't know if we're going to play through all 4 eras. I don't have World War II figures. I don't have any of the Rifleman era figures. We're going to be stuck with Jaeger and Moderns. Maybe we can throw some sci-fi figures down there to explore how the different eras play with different missions. I don't know. Stay tuned. Next time we see Doom Squad, we're just going to dive right in. I'll show you the squad that I bought. I'll show you the objectives, and we'll just go through. Probably play the easy patrol, just to get our feet wet. Ease into it a little bit. And then we can do the complicated. We'll really start, getting our hooks into this game. Until then, I'm praying for you.